Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'll straight on go to the presentation because the time is very short, and in fact I have made a lot of modification to my slides because yesterday I was told that I'll be given 8 minutes time, and to handle the issues of cybersecurity handling in 8 minutes time, I don't know how much justice I'll do to the subject. My all the slides, all the pictures will actually speak more words than what I would be speaking because I'm trying to give a context in terms of visualization so that you can visualize the threat what we are talking about. Cybersecurity, as has already been mentioned by our earlier panelists, that it's the fifth domain of warfare. It's the fifth domain of our general functioning, and so we need to handle it very carefully, and we need to look at the intricacies. Uh, when it comes to strategy, because many of the participants here are normally think tanks and others, I am a cybersecurity practitioner. So my approach will be a little different in this context. That when you talk about strategies, making strategy, I would normally not be in conformance with this statement because I believe the most of the strategies are actually built up in closed confines of a room, wherein it's like showing a billboard on the road that blind men can cross here. That kind of a billboard we are talking about when you strategize certain things which you do not even practice, you do not even understand, and then you try to strategy, you are likely to come out with a billboard like this on the road that blind men cross here. So with this, my first slide, my opening slide actually speaks about, we have talked about the state-sponsored and non-state-sponsored actors. Let me tell you, it's very difficult to actually distinguish between state-sponsored actors and non-state-sponsored actors. The only parameter on which they can be accessed, accessed is in terms of the price of attacks. So if the price of attacks is high, you can to some extent understand that it's a state-sponsored activities, and if the cost of an attack is low, you can attribute it to a non-state actor or an individual actor. That's one. Number two, the motive of the attack again gives out a lot of parameters about whether it's a state-sponsored attack or a non-state sponsored attack. Third thing is the quality of the target of attack. That's another very important parameter which will decide that who are the probable attackers. If you look at the first my own opening slide, it says that uncontrolled warriors. Actually, as one of the panelists said, that a person sitting in a remote corner of this room can actually take a country to task. I fully agree with it because in this domain, that's the only domain which does not have a requirement of a logistic supply chain and chain management system. I've not moved yet. So I've not moved yet. So I'm talking about the first slide itself because my background speaks about uncontrolled warrior. That's the front page of my book which I have written on this. So we are talking about these uncontrolled warriors who are there out in open. It's a cyber Taliban which we are talking about, and that's the real threat which we'll be demonstrating today in context of ASEAN. Now, these are the member countries. We have talked about various aspects like political, global, economic, global warming. We have talked about energy-related issues and the green earth and so on and so forth, because that could be strategized in a close confined room because most of us understand that entire dynamics. What we don't understand probably is, I have a movie right now which I'll play. I captured this movie early in the morning today at 9 o'clock, and this is what we are talking about, the global cyber attacks, how it is happening. As it is happening, I just captured it for almost around 1 month. This is a live attack scenario which is happening. If you look at it, what I want to actually point out here is not the cyber attacks which are taking place. These are actually live attacks which are taking place. I just recorded it today morning. You see there are three power centers which normally emerges, and one happens to be in the ASEAN region, which I'm talking about. I'm not talking about ASEAN region per se, but I'm talking about South Asian part of the globe. The second one is in the West Asia, Eurasia kind of a place, and the third one is in the US. So these are the three global power centers which are going to be there so far as the cyberspace is concerned. Now we need to actually work out that how we are going to strategize our things, how we are going to actually look at these kind of attack scenarios when these are coming, and these are real live attacks. There are all those who are computer security practitioners, they will know that there are maximum 65,000 windows to a computer system which can be attacked. And trust me, all these 65,000 ports or the windows or the doors to the computers are today being exploited for getting entry into the system, and that's the way how cyberspace is all about. Now, when it comes to cybersecurity, there are a couple of points, very important points in terms of ASEAN nation. First is that we unnecessarily are, talking about creating a borderless cybersecurity. Everyone talks about it's a borderless cybersecurity, but as a practitioner, I see that it's a waste of resources. If you talk about a global internet, it's a waste of resource, because there is no point actually the South Asian traffic actually going to a US server there and coming back again back to India. I mean, we need to work out certain protocols at the border gateway protocol, the routers level, when we can route our internal traffic in this region into our traffic region. That will also eliminate the threats of snooping and espionage and mass surveillance or the birth surveillance, what happens in the West. The second one is the economic upheaval of all these nations, where we are all developing nations, where the economic upheaval is actually taking the IT as a vehicle. And in this scenario, the risk of cybercrime is going to go at a very fast pace, because wherever there is money, the hackers are going to be there, and they are going to make money out of your systems itself. So the more you grow, the more are the hackers actually going to get towards the honeypot which you are going to the honey which you are going to create. The third one I propose is the creation of a regional internet grid that could be jointly owned by ASEAN and other neighboring nations, because we are the one who are going to be the directly responsible for this entire region. It's not the US or it's not the Europe which is going to come to our rescue when we have some problems, and we have very typical similar problems at hand. Uh, Fourth one is the cooperation in cases relating to terrorism. Now, terrorism is a very important chapter in this area, this part of the world. We are heavily infested with terrorism, and we are not on the brink when it comes to terrorism. So we need to have a very speedy process. There are processes existing in terms of Interpol, MLAT, and other things, but they are very cumbersome. And in case of terrorism targets, you need to be actually working in seconds and minutes, not in terms of months and years. So this is where I think we can form out our regional grid here in this area, wherein we can cooperate on terrorism in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of cyber terrorism, we can cooperate. Uh, Also on the Internet Governance Forum, IGF, I think we need to have our stance very clear from the region, because we are net user of the internet and we are not the net provider of the internet today in this scenario. So we need to have a case wherein we need to be represented very strongly in the Internet Governance Forum, where we can talk about net neutrality, we can talk about independence, privacy, advocacy, and so on and so forth. Cybersecurity grid on the lines of NATO cyber defense. Again, you have in Estonia NATO cyber defense as a grid. I think in the ASEAN region and the South Asian region, we need to have similar kind of cyber defense arrangement, wherein we can have a voice against a lot of things which we actually see and perceive in the media, that we can actually make a common voice to be heard at the global forum. Uh, Again, the ways to consolidate action on social networks against propaganda. Now, this is very, very important. We have seen actually economies flourishing with this and also getting destroyed. I will give you an example, very recent example. You would have read about the Xiaomi phones from China. Xiaomi phones actually, in sometime in October, November, there was a news item where it says that through Flipkart they sold 90,000 sets in 9 seconds. I mean, that's if you talk about the economic growth using these kind of methods, to you're talking about m-commerce and e-commerce, but there's a flip side to it. When the Ericsson went to the court, when Indian InfoSec Consortium raised a voice against Xiaomi that they are snooping on data and sending data out in to China, Chinese server, there was a High Court order which says that you need to look at it. And this High Court order, the Indian High Court order, was actually taken very seriously by Ericsson, and they filed a complaint against this particular company, saying that they are actually making use of some of our patents and they're not paying us for that. So the High Court ordered that, okay, every set which you sell, you have to pay this amount of money and deposit in the court. Now, you do not find any such news item wherein say that we sold 90,000 sets in 9 seconds. Xiaomi has vanished. They're not there. So what I want to actually portray here, it's probably companies grow overnight as the third largest manufacturers of the mobile phones in the world, just through a method of propaganda. Now, because if they claim today that they sell 90,000 sets, they will have to pay revenue for 90,000 sets. They will have to deposit in the court. So the moment these kind of an order comes into, now people become very realistic and the propaganda does not work. How are you prepared for such kind of propaganda-based economic upheaval? How are we prepared to handle these kind of threats in some competitor growing all of a sudden overnight and trying to ruin business? We need to look at it very carefully. Now, typical characteristics of ASEAN and the South Asian nations are our multi-ethnicity. Now, this is again a great challenge when it comes to social network on cyber domain. We have seen a lot of problems in Cambodia. We have seen a lot of problems in India relating to the ethnic multiplicity. So we need to have a very clear policy on social networks, that how we are going to collaborate and find ways to actually contain the kind of mispropaganda which will happen on the social network in future, because this is what is going to create the maximum amount of unrest, the civil unrest, which is very difficult to contain. You can contain a cyber war, but civil unrest, containing a civil unrest is going to be a big challenge. We have seen in Jasmine Revolution and so on. And lastly, net neutrality I have already talked about. Now, I want to show you a couple of pictures before I end my slides, because this is going to capture your imagination when it comes to, this is Boston bombing. The moment it took place, 9 seconds, the paramedicos were there on the ground. They may have strategized things, they may have done a lot of strategies, written a lot of policies and things like that, but they have tested it on ground, because when you have a bombing scenario and the 9 seconds, people turn up and they start, activating, then the, all kinds of support and paramedics, they start, taking people out. That's the kind of scenario we need today in terms of cyber. This is a very interesting slide. I mean, I don't know if people can identify this. There is no blessing going to come to you that, okay, now from today onwards, you become cyber aware. And there's not going to be an Abhimanyu born with all the learnings in the womb of mother and learn. For generating this kind of capacity and capability, you need time, and you need to start now. If you have not started yet, you need to start now, because this capacity generation in a very controlled environment is going to be the key in this particular cyber domain. My third slide is this. It's not an education that can give you a great going in cyber. It is all about this. You have to take your kid to the drawing board and let them play around in the fiddle with the electricity, like you are seeing in this picture. But at the same time, you are very cautious and watching him, that he should not, or he or she or whatever, should not get hurt with this kind of playing around. So you need to have a very controlled environment for this kind of it. It's a story of Eklavya. So Eklavya, I am sure everyone has heard of Eklavya. He learned all his art through remote thing. But at the same time, we need to ensure that this Eklavya, who could have been a great strength for the Pandavas if he was alive and he was on with his thumb, nobody should actually disable him by saying that you have not learned this art through the proper channel, so I disable you not to use this art for the advantage of the country or for whatever. So you need Eklavya not to be removed with the thumb. You need that Eklavya to be nurtured along with the thumb, so that he can become the second Arjun in war. That's what is required. I think we need to leave this, because most of the senior people actually who are taking decisions and writing strategies, they are on the older side, and this domain is pretty new. This domain, the domain experts cannot be more than 40-45 years of age. I mean, that's the way I look at it. So we'll have to shed our egos. It's won by knowledge. So that's my slide. Another one is this. We need to be willingness, our willingness to learn. That's very interesting, because the signboard, कृपया यहाँ पर ज्ञान न बांटे, यहाँ पर सब ज्ञानी है. I think we need to come out of this kind of a hypothesis. ज्ञान सब जगह है, ज्ञान सब जगह बट रहा है. We have to act like 3 idiots. One of the idiot was, कहीं पे भी जाके बैठ जाओ, कहीं कुछ तो ज्ञान मिलेगा. So that's my next slide. When you're talking about ASEAN, we need to actually work like this. You have something, I have something. Let's rest and at least stay awake. That's where we need to cooperate. That's a cooperation model. You need to cooperate like this. I will give you my back to some extent. You give me your back, so that we are all stationary like this and we don't fall down. We need to work like this again. We need to achieve something. We need to go on to the other side. We need to act like these ants. Climb on each other's, rest on each other, have trust, and then reach the other end. That's where the ant example. Time to think. How are you going to go ahead? So that's the last slide of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.